A Switch, I mean the video game. Okay, so today what I want to do is, I only have a rough idea. I want when you click on one of these things, say like maybe a light, maybe this is a dimmable light, you click on a light, it pulls up a little panel that lets you control that light. Initially I thought, well, maybe if we put little controls on here, that you use them, but I think that's going to get too small. For something like a light, maybe we have a primary function. Maybe all of these have a primary function. We can get to that later. So if you tap on it, it turns the stereo on, off, television on, off, air conditioning on, off. But that's very limited. And I also thought maybe you could put a slider in here, but that's also going to be like, yeah, you know, that's not much space. So let's first try the one where something pops up to the middle of the screen. And we're going to attempt to do this with navigation. For those of you new to the show, what we're doing this with is the product called Fuse. And you can download this and play with this for free. I'm using the Studio, but I've got it in compact mode, and this all works in the free version as well. The non-compact mode, you get all these little additional editor things. But since I've been a programmer for forever, I think better in code anyways. So we'll be doing it from the code side here. And we have a reactive declarative language here with bindings, and this is how a lot of it works. Now I'm trying to think of how we structure this now for a pop-up. The simplest approach is probably going to be a navigator. Before I continue, just know if you have any questions, just let me know. I don't mind pausing and stopping and do this. The purpose here is just to play around with it, see how this stuff does. If you're unaware of who I am, I'm actually the lead programmer on all things animation and layout related for Fuse. And so I'm basically using a lot of my own product. There are a lot of people behind the product, though. Don't let me confuse you that because I do the front end, there's not many people. There's a lot of people behind this. We have a lot of stuff here. It's been through a lot of work, and this should work on iOS and Android. It should work in native mode and a GL mode, depending on what we want. And let's get on with it then. Let's see what we want to do. The first thing we want to do is, if we're going to make pop-ups and stuff, you can do manual pop-ups, like manually move things around. If you really want to do that, you can do that, but it makes the structure a bit hard. So what we want to do is we want to put a navigator here. We're going to take this whole display here and stick it inside a navigator. Now we have no title bars or anything, and that makes it a bit easier now. So we're going to say there's a navigator here. Navigator. And the first thing it has is a dock panel. And we're going to turn off all default transitions, none. Transition equals none. I think that's all there is. Yeah, page control is inactive state, inactive. We'll get back to that one, don't worry about that. And so this dock panel is now going to be a UX template. And we'll call this one, I don't know what the selector is, let's call this one the selector. And what this means is that we're going to have something called the selector template where the stuff shows up in. If I did this right, it's going to disappear. And that's correct right now, because right now we have nothing, this navigator has nothing in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to bind it to some pages, and we have to actually create these pages now. We should get an error over here, a warning problem. Pages are not found. And pages are like the pages in the item, and our main state here now, we're going to split this up a bit and create a new state called export. Oh, we don't need export actually anymore. Class selector. This file is still short enough that we can stick this in one file. If you're doing a larger project, you'll want to start splitting these classes out into multiple files. It does. I've seen it in the other stream. If you split it off too much, it gets harder to jump around for the stream, so I'm not going to do too much there. And the constructor here, we're going to take all of this stuff here, select room, because this is all part of the selector now. This is not part of the main state. In the main state now, we're going to have something called a selector. We want to keep track of this. We're going to say new selector. And this dot pages is going to start with the selector in it. Need to be an equal sign here. Okay. And we want to add one other thing here called path. We're going to call it selector. And this is the path we bind with the template name there. You could alternately use the class name, but I like giving explicit classes. It makes the refactoring a bit easier if you ever change the names. It makes it more obvious what's going on, but you have that option. And so now we get that back. And so what we've done, just to clarify here, is we've created this class called selector, which has all our data in it. And then we've created this, in the main thing we said pages, and we put our selector in it. And so in the view, this pages binds to it, and the topmost page, this is an array of pages, the topmost one will be the one that's shown there. And in Navigator, this is actually a history. It's not a static list, this is actually a history of pages. What you may want to do is you may want to create a welcome page, just to see this is working. Let's create a welcome page first of all. And I'll create this very roughly. We don't really need to do very much. Text value equals welcome. Or we call it, say, home control app. Home control app. Let's call it home control. That's even better. And we won't put spaces to make it fancy. Or we want to give it more of a, an app-like name, home controller. Home controller. Just leave out the values and make it weird. And we better leave the O in there. Then this will be an app-like name that other stores have is small, and you can drop off the home. Whatever, that's not the important thing, but I want to have something there. Font size equals 32. Color, let's make this one white. And alignment equals center. If I type a lot of commas, it's because I've been working with other languages most of the weekend, so comma is my default separator. And this path is going to be UX template equals welcome, and nothing will happen to the display because we're still stuck on the first page. But what we can do is we'll create a class called class welcome constructor, and instead of doing this dot select, we're going to have this dot welcome equals new welcome, and we're going to start at this dot welcome. Okay, and this has something up here. We don't really need the class, doesn't make that much difference. And we're going to create a function here in the main state that says go selector. So wherever you are, just go to the selector, and this can be done just by resetting the pages equals this dot selector. And we may actually want to check here to say if we're actually going back. And so what happens here is we're going to say hit test mode was local bound. So we click on anywhere, even though it's transparent, we want to click on anywhere. And if we click on it, we're going to do go selector. Now it might be hard to get over here. We have a problem. Welcome, not found. Welcome. And that's because, again, I forgot the path over here. Now you don't have to put a path here. If you really want, you can say use welcome, and then it matches the class name by default. And so you can see it uses that. That's an option. Home controller, and I don't like the cross name. We'll fix the name in a second. But now when we click somewhere, it goes over here. That's the basic thing for the selector. We go there and go back, and I'll just remove the fancy name. And that should be enough. We have that. We may not want to start that. That's just to show the basic navigation. So the thing we want to do now is make it so when you click on one of these items, you go to some sort of page for it. Where is it? And we're going to push that page on top. So let's make another page here saying, I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be a template equals, and what do we call these things again? We call them item. I'm going to call it an item page. Item. And now we're going to do something. We're just going to put something in here first of all. Rectangle, corner radius equals 20, alignment equals center, height equals... Well, now we might want to say the width equals 90% and the height equals 90%. It's a graphical separation. And we'll worry about the different modes later, because we could also say if we want this square or whatever. Let's just leave it as is for now, though. And color equals... color secondary, I guess. We created one of those in our palette. Now we need something that goes here. And this will be in the selector. So the first thing we deal with is on this item selector. We have this column space in these items, and we want to make something happen when you click on them. So grid, I think each item here, fill aspect, we're going to make something happen when you click on these. So, and actually, I'm not going to use clicked. I'm going to use tapped. I don't know if you can use tapped here. I don't remember. We usually use clicked. And I'll explain in just a second why we're using tapped and not clicked. And go item. Okay, it didn't seem to complain, so we might be okay. Go items not found, that makes sense. Although I'm not sure why it's looking it up yet. There's a weird logic in the preview sometimes, but that should be okay. And so on this selector, now we have a go item thing. And go item, maybe you want to call it select for consistency, it's uncertain. But now we need to change the main state's navigation. So on the selector page, we're going to pass a pointer back to this, to the main state. So this knows where it is. Main state. And we'll say it down here. This dot main state equals main state. Now what we want to do is, how do I want to do this? We have an item here somewhere, and this is going to be one of these items. It's going to have an item object. But we need to make an item page. Right, so we want to make an item page. And it takes an item. And this may seem weird at first, but we have to do it because the page and the item are not the same thing. This item is part of our internal data structure, and the page is going to be the visuals for that. What are we actually looking at? And this lets us add more controls without polluting the data model. You could, if the item is very important, you could actually stick it all onto that page itself. And it's very uncertain here, and there's a lot of room for maneuverability here in exactly how you do it. And we might want to get rid of the welcome screen, because otherwise you have to keep clicking through each time. And just in debugging mode, we might want to get rid of it. But I can leave it for now. So this item. And so go to item, we're going to say this dot main state push new item page args.data, because args.data is going to be the item that was clicked because we are iterating the item list, and so the items in the data are going to be that data. And so we push the state there. And so now we have a function here called go or push. This is meant to be internal, that's okay. This dot pages dot push. Oh, it's supposed to have a page. Page. Let's see how far we got with this so far. So we click on this, and we click on a fan. Alright. You see the page comes up, and it's in the background, because we haven't transitioned it very well. And that's because we've done transition nothing. And this is where, usually if we took the transition out, so if you want to see what happens if we take out the transition none, and the reason I put it this here is because then you had the default one. We can press back. We're gonna have. I don't have a way to go back yet, so let's restart the viewport. When doing preview, when you're first doing navigation, you might have to use viewport restart quite a bit. If you've screwed up your navigation, you're stuck in a state you can't get out of. It should go relatively quick. So, and now I clicked twice there, unfortunately, and I know why go back's not working because I don't have a router. Let's add a router in here, and then go back should actually work. There we go. But you notice this transition, it would work, and I'm using the hardware key now. And notice to get the go back working, all I did is add a router, and this adds in default routing capabilities. You don't have to use this, but then you have to be sure to implement your own back buttons and stuff. So I'm pressing the hardware go back button, and we don't really like this transition here. Like, I mean, it'd work, but it's not really that nice. It's for this type of setup. For a lot of setups, this is just fine. It's just in this one, it's not particularly the nicest one. And that's why we said transition equals none. And what we're going to do is on the dock panel, though, and on the welcome page, we're going to put while inactive. We're just going to hide this thing. We're going to, well, it's never, this one's actually not here because it's never in the background. We'll tell you about it later. And it's going to say while inactive, we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to change selector.z offset equals -1. This will push it into the background. And I want to put a big overlay on it, which hides it. Whoops. Panel color equals, and we're going to take the background color here. Or, I'm not sure. Let's take the background color. And I'm going to make transparent by default, and visibility is equal to hidden, or collapsed in this case. Shouldn't cause much of a concern. Collapsed, and UX name equals overlay. And this actually has to go... We have to worry about that margin there, and that margin is... If I stick this on layer background, it won't be in the correct place. So we have to get rid of this margin here. So we're going to have to create another panel. And put that inside of it. And then put the dock panel inside there. Now we have to be sure to put this part in the actual right panel while the panel's inactive. And we also have to put the selector on the right name. Oops. We want to change select to Z offset, and we want to change overlay.color, and we're going to take this color again, and we're going to completely cover the background. Well, not completely. We're going to mainly cover it so you can't see the stuff anymore. And that's going to consume all our mouse clicks as well, but we can make it function as a back item then also. And we have to also change the overlay.visibility equals visible. And we'll change this color over a slope period of 0.3 or something, just so it's not an abrupt change. Let's see if I did that correctly. Well, you can kind of see it in the background there, but I don't think the contrast is going to be enough. Now let's just change it to pure black then. We're going to overlay pure black. I don't need as many colors for that. 008. Okay, ignore that background bit now. So now when it goes in the background, now you can see it kind of dimmed out in the background. And that may not be enough. We may want even more dimming. And this window's not going to be as big though. Oops, I forgot. We're fixing a bug now where if you scroll, you resize too much, it crashes. Sorry about that. I keep forgetting that one. It's on our high list of things to work on. So let's just restart that again. Whee. Ignore that. I actually wonder where that report button goes. If we report it, if we'd actually get a report for it. Takes a while to start up with OBS running. It's a bit slow to screen with, but the OBS obviously consumes most of my CPU time. There we go. Open the Smart Home app. Okay, skip this. Oh, and 1.72 just made it out during my stream, so let's just skip that for now. I'm on 1.71. Let's go. So the overlay is not perfect, and this is probably because this item down here, let's make it 80%, 80%, so you can see it a bit more. And because this deals with multiple items, the preview worm is sometimes you get in a state that's not actually a real state. Okay, so now you see it in the back there. It doesn't take as much space, but you see it black in there, and what I want to do is when you click on it, I want to go back. And so this panel here, we're going to say tapped, or we might just say clicked in this case, clicked equals go selector. So now when you click somewhere outside the panel, trust me, come on. What did I do wrong? There's an error. No. There we go. I think it was just a reload issue. Be aware of that sometimes. So when you go to an item, now you can see the back fade out, and will be the control for this item. And this item's fine. If you click outside of it, it'll go back, as will the back button go back. Except when you press the back button, notice that it sticks around because it's now in the foreground. And so you may not actually want to have back button enabled on such an app. If you're not doing traditional navigation, you may not actually want that, because what this does is it creates a stack. Now this other page is now in the foreground, Well, we really don't want that. We want it to just go away entirely. And we can do that. If you want to completely control the navigation on your own, you can just get rid of the router. You lose a bunch of default controls. The other option is you can put the transition on it, on the template item, that you can say, while inactive, you can simply hide it then. Change item, visibility equals collapsed. And then you can animate this transition as well. So you have many options here. And that achieves the same thing, and it keeps us with the go back button. So it keeps the standard back button, which is sometimes nice. It simplifies a lot of navigation. But now we want to put something in here. We'll focus on one first. What might a light do? A light might have an on and off or a dimmer. To make this interesting, let's make it on a dimmer. Okay, but we have this light thing here now, and it's like, oh, but what is a light? If all of these have different controls, we have to worry about, well, there's going to be a different control for each of these. They have some common things, but they have different things as well. We can do that in the state by, instead of creating basic items, we can create a, let's create a light, right? Let's create a light, and this is a light item. Was it extends or was it colon? Oh, I've forgotten. That's pretty bad. Name, color, icon, energy, and JavaScript is, I've lost my little sheet where I have these things referenced. Super, yeah, name, color, icon, energy. And we're going to set one more thing. We're going to set one more thing. We're going to say template equals light. It's going to do nothing yet. In these places where we create a light right now, we're going to create an item light instead. We're going to rename that thing to be an item light. Item light, item light. This is just one way of doing it. You have other options, and I'm trying to think logically if we'd actually have a separate class for each one, because this would be dynamic data structure. You know what? I don't think we would. It depends how complex the setup is, why you'd have a dynamic data structure for this not. So I'm deciding between whether we have a specific instance for each of them, and if we're loading from remote data, having a specific class for each of them is very difficult. So let's keep it with just one class here. And we'll add a type to it. Type. This dot type equals type. And I'm going to have to add that to all the things down here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to add a default type, or generic. And we'll add this to all of them, and then we'll fix up light to be something else. But it's not supposed to be on room, it's supposed to be on the lights. And this looks more like something you'd get from a remote JSON request than with data. You're not messing around with dynamic types. You have all the same item types. And this makes a lot of sense. We don't want to overuse inheritance for this, especially since this is just raw data. It doesn't care what type it is. The UI can worry about that. And so for the lights, we're just going to do light, light, light. Light, and nothing should change in the display. Now what we want to do in the main view now is we have this item page. We're going to split this one off first of all into a separate class. We can leave the item here, and we're going to create a panel. We're going to call it an item page, just like this. And this is just going to be a panel. We're not going to put the page in here, though. We're just going to stick the page outside to make the len class deal with it. Item page. And it has a background like this. I'm trying to think who actually does this alignment center and stuff. We'll let the page deal with it. This is a, sorry, item page.ux. Okay, it should be gone now. Okay, we have an item page that has nothing on it, of course, and I don't have a design for this page, so I don't have like a visual design for this. I just have a structural thing. So we're just going to throw in some basic bits here. We might want to make this page be a dock panel for some standard controls, and at the top we're going to put text dock equals top, font size equals 30, value equals. Now we're on the item, and if you saw, when you create this with the binding of the item, and in main state we push something called an item page, it means the inner context is something called item page, which has an item in it, so which we can get at to, and it has a name in it. So it has an item.name, alignment equals center. Okay, so you have a fan. Now I meant to put that inside the rectangle though, so the rectangle has to be layer equals background, and I meant it to be white. We should probably put color text primary though instead of white, in case you want to change this later, and in main view we'll start adding those colors. And you can also stick these in resources file if you want, but I'll stick them here for now. UX global equals color text primary. There we go. So now we have that fan inside here, and if you click anywhere else, remember you can dismiss it, and somehow this is not necessarily working when I reload it here. So we got that. This is PlayStation. We might want to put some border on that. Control B goes back. And this should have some padding on it as well. Padding equals 10. We'll be generous with the padding. And I'm going to change these now to max width. So the items don't have to take up the whole page if you don't want. So we have a light, and it's not really... it's kind of small now because it has no controls in it. Let's pretend the light is a dimmable value. But first off, before we want to control it, and we want to do, it depends on what item we have, what we show now. So we're going to use something called an instance class. And the item is going to be, well, we don't need an item. Yeah, we do. We need an item equals item, I think. We need to switch on the item, or we can switch on the data. Let's switch on the data itself. We need a match key. Again, there's a bit of structuring thing here. I'm not entirely certain how we do it. And do a match key as type. And that was the type we said before. What was the type? And so now we can have a panel with UX template equals light. We said this was the type. And let's just throw some text in here quickly to see what it is. This is a light. And then we're going to put a default template. UX is default template. I think that's the right name for it. Template. It's true. Everything else. This might just have some basic info about it or no special panel. Okay. Uh-oh. UX is default template. Maybe just default template. There we go. So now when you click on a fan, you see it says everything else. We don't know what it is. But if we click on a light, you say this is a light. I don't know if you can read that, but it says this is a light. And so what we've done is we've created a dynamic UI based on the type of the item. So we have some wrapper about the thing, which is the same. And we have a per specific one. So let's throw the icon up there as well, though. So panel dock equals top. We're going to do a dock panel dock equals top. No, just a panel. Or, I don't know design-wise. I don't know design-wise what I want to do here. I don't run the top panel with talk, so I'm going to put the text dock equals left, value equals, and I want to put the icon. What do you call the icon again? Icon. An icon, I said these aren't graphics. You should probably use graphics in your project. I was just throwing in random Unicode stuff just to deal with it initially, just to get something there. And So we want this one the same size. We can make this one slightly bigger. Let's make this one 50. Alignment equals center. Margin equals, we want space on the right of it. 0, 0, 10, 0. And the text we're going to do, it doesn't have, we're going to not put a duct, we're just going to align it to the bottom left. Take out that alignment. Okay. So we click on a fan. I did something wrong there. Where's my icon? Oh, because it has to be item.icon. I forgot there's an item.icon here. So we have a light. And these types of things here, you might want to put a min width on. When you have varying things like this, and you may not have anything in it, and you need to do something quickly, if you don't want to mock up all the content, but you want to see how it works, you can set like a minimum width of 200 and a minimum height of, say, 200. So it's at least that size. And so now you have something that's at least that size, and this padding here is too much. I don't actually want that margin, it looks like. And so now we have a light there, and maybe you want to put another little line, a little separator, and let's fix the color at the top so we can actually have separators through this that make it look like a separated item. So I want this color again, the background color. I don't think you can bind to a resource in the app tag itself. That might be the one place you can't. Let's try it. Global should work though. Color background. Global should work. Okay. And in the item page, I want to do one other thing. I want to do this is a dock panel too, so I'm going to do a panel height equals 2, dock equals top, color equals color background. Alright, and you see it's sticking there, but that's not the effect I wanted. It's because of this padding 10. I need to get rid of this padding now and stick it on the independent ones. Padding equals 10. Down here we can add another panel with the padding equals 10 if we want. And this is just so we can create that one thing sitting in the background. You could also use negative margins and stuff, but it's a lot more difficult to control. And so now we have a separated little box here. I don't know if we really want to do that. I mean, is it good or not? I'm just throwing some random things up here right now. As with always, you want to sit down and come up with a more pleasing aesthetics than that. But I'm focused on navigation now. So now you have this television come up. You have television. And they have no special control, and the light has no special control. And we can see this is packed too closely together, so they should have actually had a margin. Just some of our icons, because we're using Unicode, don't actually have a very good margin. It should at least be 5,0. And oops, I'm pressing the wrong key. Now it's hard to line up because it's a font. It's hard to line up the baselines. I actually consider this a little bit of an error in the font itself, that these baselines should be the same. Because this is Unicode, right? And like this is the problem with icons from Unicode, and the reason why you don't really want to use them is you have no control over the baseline, the height, the ascenders, the descenders. And now you can see none of them actually share the same baseline, because otherwise our text should line up. But whoever the font designer is here, I don't know where they put the baseline. It just appears to just ignore it, and there is none. So what do we want in a light? So we're going to say, what does a light have? It has some sort of slider value. Maybe it's a dimmable light. Let's make it dimmable slider. Let's just stick a slider in here, and it's a dimmable value. And we may also want to have an on-off button on this thing. I don't know how we want to do this rectangle, a rectangle or something, and let's do panel width equals 100, I guess. Height equals 50. I'm not going to give it a color. I'm going to give it, actually put a rectangle instead. So I can add stroke width to it. Stroke width equals 1. Stroke color equals, I just don't know. We can use color background again, I guess. It's getting a bit weird. Corner radius equals 10 again. We put some text in here. Text value equals. And this is always a very interesting dilemma for UIs. Well, what do you write on labels that respond to like whether something's on or off? Do you write the current state or do you write the state that it should have on it? And usually so far it looks like you write the current state, but there are some issues with that. It's hard to decide. I'm not 100% clear on that yet. So let's just say on for now, and we'll show how to make this controllable later. And this is alignment equals center, of course. And this is a stack panel. So now we have a dimmable light, and this would obviously have to control something. So this would control the light in your house, I guess. You'd slide it back and forth and you'd have it dim it, and we have this thing to toggle it on and off. So let's actually get that working with the data model. Alignment equals center, first of all. Color equals white. Oh yeah, color text primary. And get rid of this so we get this as light value. And we should put a bit of a padding, a margin above here. Margin equals 0, 10, just so the user has some space with it. If we have delegated controls, they have lots of space here. And so they can slide this value. Now, this is where the min width comes in. It's like, well, sliders are inherently sized to the control they're in. They don't have a size of their own in this direction. And you'd like to use more screen space because you want to have, if you had a small phone, you don't want to be stuck in here. And if you had a big tablet, you don't want the whole screen size. So you can pick, like I say, let's the minimum width make it 300 instead. And that forces it to be wider. And you'll have to test the devices, but I think 300 should fill most of your devices. But I believe min applies anyways first. I can't remember. Oh no, it doesn't. Oh well. Sorry about that. Oh well, put 300. The alternative is you can actually say, you could go to max width and stuff, so you could put a width and a max width of 300 or something, and you could play around with the layout values until you have something you want. Okay, so now we have a dimmable light, but we want these values to go somewhere, and we want to know whether it's on or off. So the main state, this is the one problem we have with this item here. Now we're going to have to stick additional data in here that's coming from the JSON, that if you had a type, well, do you have dynamic entries for the control values? And if you're dealing with these remote control values, typically your JSON or your data structure is not going to have things like dimmable value or on-off switch. It's just going to have like control 1, control 2, control 2, control 3 or something. It's going to have weird stuff like that. So we're going to recreate that now. It might have an on-off control though, so it might have an actual status. And let's just call this on-off. Yeah, let's call it an actual status and just say true or false. And it may have something called a level, because a level is very common between devices too. And you could actually use this to dynamically create the display whether it has them, because like a stereo is going to have a level as well. A stove might have a level, but it would be kind of silly to control it via the phone. And lights have levels. The watering outside may have a level, so level might be common. And we'll make this a normalized value. Normalized values are very good for UIs. Otherwise, you just have to pass a range around with it as well. And so we'll start this one at 0.7. That seems like a reasonable normalized value. And in the item page here, we're going to take the slider value. I'm going to say minimum equals 0, maximum equals 1. And this is why we normalize. It makes it easy to do here. I'm going to say the value is item.level. And text on, we're now going to do this optional thing here. And we're going to do this item dot status. If it's on, it's going to say on. Otherwise, it's going to say off. Okay, and now, if we tap this thing, I'm going to say tapped on here. Tapped equals toggle status. And I know there's errors, but let's get toggle status in here first. This dot status equals not this dot status. Now, obviously, this, if you're doing the actual control from home, you'd actually have to do a request off to your server here. So this isn't just toggling the status. This is actually going to go to the server and say, hey, update this. And the same with modifying the level. You're going to have an interceptor here. And there's a way to watch for values to be modified that'll update it. I don't know what I did there. But I actually have an error here, so let's reload this. Auto reload. Why don't I have to see what the error is? Item declared in main view is a member of main view. Item page 20. No control. Whoa, what's that? Go away. Ah, I pressed the wrong key. Go away. Go. Let's go to line 20, the manual line 20. Item.status. This is coming from my context, not from the... Alright, so if we're on the light, we don't know if it's working out, but you can see the value maintained. So if I go away, the value should maintain when I come there and back, because it's actually part of the data model now. Oh, and that wasn't updating, though. Oh, now it's updating. Oh, no, we had to... Okay, now yeah, you can't click on the side, because I make the mistake that we very often make, is that this rectangle here is transparent. Right? There's nothing... It has no background color, so it's not actually... So the only thing that's clickable here is a text value. So you can change this to hit test mode equals local bounds, and that makes the whole button toggleable. But what we might actually want to do is change the state. Why is this down here? Okay. We want to change the color to while true value equals item.status. We want to change... Let's give this a name. And we're going to give it a color too, which is going to make it clickable suddenly. It's hard to say whether what our indicators should be for on or off. I don't generally like the buttons, because if we do the buttons, it's going to be a problem that if you have other controls, it's going to be very hard to make them consistent. Ideally, you'd have changed the graphic of it, but that's going to get hard. So let's just take that off. So assuming we had a different graphic here, is there a light bulb, a light bulb? Is there an empty light bulb, a turned off light bulb? Probably not, huh? All right, so we don't have a light bulb, so I don't have a way to indicate that it's on or off other than this text for now. But at least we fixed the clicking, so if you turn it on and off, it'll be on and off. And then you have the value, the slider up here, which would adjust the lights in the house. Now, also be aware, if you were doing such an app like this, you know, maybe you don't actually need a lot of on-screen feedback, because if you're actually adjusting the light in the room, it should be fairly obvious what you're adjusting. So this creates one. We have a light control. We have this basic light, and when you click away, it goes back here. We don't have any transition animation just yet, so let's add one of those. Let's add a transition animation to this thing, and we can stick that in the main view. We're going to make them all the same, an item. And while inactive, change to collapse. Now we might actually need a transition. We'll just do a generic one. And we're going to have to get rid of that while inactive now. Change, yeah, just put that down here, because we're making it more specific now. Change to collapsed. I'm going to do a delay of 0.3. going to do a scale factor of 0.0. Duration equals 0.3. Okay, now the reason it goes away right away has to do with how we're going back. Because it's no longer part of the history, it's being removed entirely. So we can put a removing animation for that then as well. And this really depends on the structure of your navigation. Because I said you're not actually going back. When you click on the button, what main is actually doing is it's not like really going back. It's just removing that page. It's gone from the history. And so it's gone removed. And you just have to be aware of these slight differences when working with it, whether you have a removing animation or not. So this one will also be a scale factor of 0.1. You still need the change there though for, okay, let's see. Well, it's not working the way intended. Although transition should work too, to be honest. Maybe there's a defect here. Oh, well, I had to put a duration here as well. Something's weird here. Alright, so I'm not quite getting what the problem here is, but there's a problem here, and I'm going to have to look into that one a little bit off. We'll just ignore it for now. Something wrong. We can at least put an easing to this thing. Easing equals cubic in or something. What's the problem now? Well, easting, yeah, I have to call it right, not easing. Easting, but easing. Well, that caused it to work. So something wasn't reloaded correctly. Okay. And going back sometimes, it's better to be faster going back. So let's make the removing a bit faster. Easing, and we're going to change it to cubic out to increase the speed that it looks like it's happening. But again, something's not reloading correctly, so there we go. And we can actually make the out scale to 0 now. The reason I use 1 is because we have a slight issue there. Hello, pigeons. I've never read a book for C#, so I can't make any recommendations to C#. Our Uno language, which we write Fuse in, is actually based on C#. So I do kind of know C#, but I don't know any books for it, sorry. Okay, so we have this, we have that feedback there. We have a light, so that's our basic light control. It comes up and goes away. And our fan has nothing in it. Fan, you might want to have a speed too, because fan is going to have an on-off. So fan was actually going to be the exact same control, which is a little bit weird. Except for the fact that most home fans probably don't have like dimmable. Actually, most lights aren't dimmable either. And you'd have to look at my other tutorial then. If your light isn't dimmable, you just have on and off. And a fan, you can look at one of the other tutorials we have for step sliders. There's a user step, and that would step it to various levels. Pigeons, do I do cybersecurity? I would not say I'm an expert in that area. No, I've worked with it before, but I'm really not extremely well versed in it. But if you were working on an app like this, smart home phone is something you should really have to know security-wise, because you would really want your JSON selector stuff to have really good security, not that your neighbor can start playing with your lights. Alright, so that gives us the one light one. Let's create one other one first to actually create some to show there was difference, because air conditioner is going to be the exact same thing, on, off, level. Television might be, hard to say what television is going to be. What controls we might have for these. I'm running out of, so what do we have? Maybe in the dining room we have some controls. Stereo has a volume as well, and you might have skip, next, and forward tracks. So your stereo maybe have next, forward. Let's do a stereo one then. Stereo one might have different speakers. And I just want to show something that can show we have different states for these things. And so in the item page, and again, you can break these item classes off into separate pages. And we're going to create one for stereo as well, stereo. And it has a level as well, so it has a wonderful level. Oops, pressed the wrong key again, wrong keyboard. It's really difficult switching between keyboard layouts, and I can't remap my Mac one so well, but it's a little bit weird. Okay, so we have a slider for item level, and that would also apply to a lot of things. And you could reuse this. You could actually create little classes and embed them together to reuse them. Let me show you how that would work. So you might have common item stuff, like you might have a slider, and this is a UX class equals level item. And then you could reuse this level item. Hello, destroy computers. Level item. Then you can reuse level item in multiple places, and that would be enough. And the same with an on-off control. You might want to have an on-off control, do it the same way. And then you can reuse these bits, and they would have the exact same look and feel to them. And if you need to modify them, then great, then create another one. But this also lets you create things a lot faster. On-off item. And you can stick an on-off item here, on-off item. And our stereo has the same controls. What I say we also want in the stereos, you might have a speaker selection of some kind. So we should be able to add maybe some speakers in here, and well, maybe speakers have selected values. So let's do that. Let's actually say you have multiple speaker sets. Let's just say there's 2 of them, and you can change it, or 3 of them. It'd be really weird to have multiple speakers in the same room, though, because that would actually be something every room would have its own speakers on it. So actually, yeah, we want to do playing, yeah. Maybe there's a play control. That's what I thought we were going to do, page control. So now we want to have a little grid, and we do a row count of 1, and child order is going to be column major, as opposed to default row major. Destroy computers, we're working on some visuals for a home control app, home control monitoring app. What we did so far is this from last time we had the selection of rooms and stuff, and what we're doing right now is we created a light switch so you can turn the light on and off, and a control, if it's dimmable, do dimmable. And I'm trying to work on one right now for a stereo, which was in the dining room, because right now we have a generic one, and I want to put some basic controls in the stereo as well. And we may want to go skip track or next track or something. And this is the grid, and we're going to put we're going to make use of Unicode again, just very quickly. We'll very quickly do this. Text value equals, and font size equals 32. And these are probably button values, though. So we're going to create a common button panel UX class equals control button. And it's actually, we can make it a rectangle again, rectangle. And we will do a corner radius equals 10. And we'll copy those stroke colors again. Stroke width equals 1. Stroke color background. So pigeons, I'm working on the home control system. This is just a mock-up. We don't actually control the home. I'm just showing how some of the UI can be done in Fuse. So if you had a home control on the back end, how you'd hook it up and say, like, how can we control all the items in the house? And this code I'm working on right now is the UX code for it. The file name is called UX. It just happens to line up with your experience. This is the AI layer. It's a declarative reactive language with bindings to the JavaScript data model. As we see here, we have items, and we have item status like item level, and that controls the volume. And yeah, we certainly think it's cool. We find it's a really quick way to write UIs, and this works on Android and iOS. So far, I find it the fastest way to do UIs, and I've been doing UI programming, let's just say, for a very long time now. Alright, so we're going to have color background here, rectangle. I'm going to stick something in the rectangle. we want to have a property UX property equals label, and we'll stick that text in the center, text value equals, and I'll show you what we're doing here in a second. Property equals this dot label, alignment equals center, color equals color text primary. And we could have actually done this label up here as the same way. Probably should have, to be honest, because of the same button types. And so let's just ignore the Unicode for now. I just say control button. We have a label equals. I'll just use quick values and less than. Control button label equals pause and control button label equals greater than. Let's put 2 line less than's here and less than. Let's see what that does actually. See if this is working. So if we're on the stereo, oops, I forgot to change the stereo type. And so that's because right now it's still selecting the generic template, the default template. So if we go down here, where is our stereo? Again, you're hoping the database would have this. This will be a stereo type. Or you might have a music type. You might have some sort of media type. And the media type can control multiple things. And I'll just say stereo for now. We're not doing data modeling so much. And again, this looks very much like the JSON or JSON response you might get from the server. And it'll be saying it's a stereo. And if we go on to the dining room, we go to stereo. Now we have a stereo type, and I've forgotten to lay it out correctly. That's a terrible layout. This was supposed to be a stack panel. And this on-off item, sorry my phone's ringing. Somebody made it loud at one point. I don't know who it is. So just ignore it for now. And now we have these buttons here. Now we obviously want some padding on that because that button's not very nice. We're going to put some spacing on here. And just go cell spacing equals 10. And we want to have, well, the button should have a minimum height of, say, 50. All right. So I didn't use any icons here, you might. So now we have a typical stereo control. It'll have an on-off thing, and it can turn it on and off. And what do these things actually control? This very much depends on how you hook up to the back-end server. You could do something like clicked equals. You may just want to have names that map up, and you may want to say back clicked equals control back or something. Control back. So pigeons don't fly. The Rust stuff I do on another stream. So this is not Rust right now at all. Of course, this is Uno and UX. Well, UX is what you see. This is the language I'm actually writing in now. The Rust stuff I do on the coding game stream. So I do multiple things in the stream, and I'll be getting back again that probably tomorrow or Wednesday. I'll be doing a bit more of that. Control forward and control next. So I like to switch languages a lot, so if you want to learn a bit about lots of different languages and a lot of different tools, you can stick with me because I'm going to keep changing it. And, oh man, somebody really wants to get a hold of me. I'm going to ignore them though. Let me just hang up on them. Go away. How do I learn a language? I just start using it. That's what I did with Rust. I just started using it, and I find this the best way to start learning using it. And I just do lots of stuff in it. Obviously, the competition there. Alright, so we have this. We have item spacing. So we have our stereo control. And so I put this control pause, control next, control back. And we might want to put in this item path now. Give logical names to these things like control back. You might have a function like device.send control signal back or something like this. I don't know what you actually do. This is going to have to hook into there somehow. Control pause. And I'll just comment this out because it won't do anything. And Control Next. You'll have to decide on your own what this would do with the back end. But what that gives us now is we have the light control. We have a light can do on and off. And we have in the dining room, we did the stereo control. And you may want to show what song is currently playing as well. So we can fake that right now. We can fake this and say this dot status or status string playing, what's the name of a good song? Let's just say good song so I don't have to choose any names. Playing good song. And then you can stick that in there. And again, exactly how you tie this data up is going to be a bit different. Level item. And maybe we want to put the status in the top here. And I don't know. Let's just put it in here for now. Text value equals status string, I think I called it. Did I call it that? Status string. So our light doesn't have one, but our stereo is playing a good song. And so you could actually have feedback here, how much you integrated with your system. And this goes way beyond what I want to do in this type of show, though. I just want to show the basics of it. I want to show the basics that each one of these items can have a different pop-up screen, even though it's using the basic same navigation. And so I think that accomplishes that. The text is off there, on, off. And again, you click anywhere else to go back. You can also press the actual back button on the device, and that'll go back as well. I think, now I'm not going to go through and create all of these because I don't know what they should do, but you might want to put default statuses in all of them. The one thing that I wanted to do, but I have to test it offline first because it's a bit complex, is this pop-up in the middle. It works, but it's not nearly as satisfying as if the pop-up came from this item. So if you clicked on here, the box popped out from there and went back to there. I'd really like to get that working, but I'm going to do that offline first because there's a lot of twiddling and I don't want to subject you to a lot of twiddling and randomness because I haven't done this one. I did this last in the item viewer, and this is about 1.5 years ago, and I haven't done it combined with navigation and the Model.js system, and so I just don't know exactly how it works. But we can get back to it. Maybe I can figure it out in the next stream. I can show us how to do that, and I can clean up some other things in the meantime. And if anybody knows of any free graphics to use for home control, we'd gladly use them instead as placeholders. Okay, but this is what I wanted to show on this stream, so I think we did that. And again, let's go over how I did that. We made a navigator here out of the main item, so this whole thing is sitting in a navigator now, and the main state controls that via pages parameter. It starts at welcome, and then it goes to the selector, and as you select an item, it pushes the page on it. And that's where this go-to item here does. It pushes a page. I'll push this code all up to GitHub after the show as well, so you can look at it there, and I'll put it in the notes for the show. And when you're on that page, so that's the main view, the item page is down here, template equals item, and it loads item page. And there's the animations. The item page itself is over here. And the key bits of the item page is it using this instance. This is something we've not used in the show before. And it matches it up to the item. And it uses a match key. And the match key says what value an item, and that's type. And we said type is like stereo, generic, or light. And then it selects a template based on that type. And that determines which graphical display it gets. So the light gets the light display, the stereo gets a stereo display, and the air conditioner gets a generic one because it doesn't have any values to it yet. Okay, that's all I wanted to show today, so that'll be it for today. I don't know if I can be here on Wednesday. I think I have an appointment, maybe Thursday for another stream. I can't guarantee I'll get another few stream done this week, but I will be doing the Rust Superhero stream again this week, either Wednesday or Thursday, later in the day. And on Friday, hopefully, finally, maybe I can get to doing an actual Leaf stream. We're doing some SDL graphics. I just have to clean up one more thing there first. I just want to get my image display, and then we'll do that. So and thanks for watching, and resubscribe, follow, tweet, all that stuff, great stuff, and we'll be back again, and I'll publish this code for you. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.